Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Better podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the F1 Canadian GP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. And Max keeps on just running away with this title challenge. 6 wins for Red Bull on the trot, and Max is further away from Checo Perez than he has been for the last 3 races. Um, not the best day for Red Bull, uh, but Max would be a happy man, or was a happy man at the end of the race. With a clear lead.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, he was under pressure from Carlos Sainz in the last 10 or so laps, but I think obviously he had the pace throughout the weekend, especially in the dry conditions, right? And that showed in Q3 yesterday, and finally he absolutely just dominated the race with without ever looking back in his mirrors to see where the others are, except when the safety car closed the field up and gave Carlos Sainz a fighting chance for it. But had it not been for the safety car, I think Max Verstappen would have run away with it easily.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
was quite.
even if he had pitted for us, with the second stop and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been much faster, and there were like 20 laps left, and Carlos Sainz
Exactly.
was on like
Exactly.
24 lap old hards. But I was honestly surprised to see Carlos Sainz challenge Max as much as he did. I thought Carlos would not be able to keep up with the Red Bull, given the pace that we've seen from Carlos throughout the weekend. He was always 3 to 4 tenths shy of whatever Max Verstappen was putting up. And again, even in the wet quali yesterday, he didn't have the same confidence as Max, and he started P3. So that was that. But definitely feel bad for Checo Perez. Kind of bended during quali yesterday, so he didn't start in the top 10. Started outside the top 10, and before he could even make an impact, he was out of the race. But given how the race unfolded, it'd be hard to imagine that Checo Perez would have finished outside the top five.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw. I mean, obviously, Checo Perez was on a run of form for the last few races, and his incident in Collie sort of hindered that form, maybe. But those are difficult conditions, and you can't specifically blame the driver on it or blame the driver for it. But of course, having a DNF for mechanical issues, for the gearbox issue, is not good for your championship, not good for your form, not good for your basic mindset and everything. But of course, we have a week's gap before Silverstone, so that may give Red Bull time and Checo time to get back. But yeah, I think as you said, Checo, even if he had run the entire race, he may have been outside the top five, because we saw Charles Leclerc. He had the pace, he came through the field, but with the safety car in the end, he stayed. I mean, the safety car did help him a bit, I guess, but he still stayed outside of the top five. So
I mean, he
it's
did finish fifth, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah, fifth. Yeah. So I mean, obviously we can't. It's all a hypothetical, but it would have been a difficult race of Perez nonetheless.
Yep. Even I think Charles was nursing a differential issue in his car throughout the race. He wasn't happy with it, and he was complaining on the radio. But I think the most comical retirement of the race was Yuki Tsunoda. Just gets out of the pits, sends it a little too hard,
Yeah.
and and in the wall. But
Yeah, and I mean his parents were here from
oh, okay.
Japan, so that was not a good weekend for him now.
Uh,
Mixed weekend, yeah.
Yeah, but I think one big news story that I feel like not enough people are picking up is the pace that Mercedes had in the dry conditions on race day. They were right up there. I think I think the commentators were doing like a lap by lap analysis of the Mercedes pace on the hard tires, and it seemed that the Mercedes was running right up there with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. So I'm not saying that they are there. What I'm saying is, they are building up to that place more or less. But at the same time, it seems they may not be sure where the pace is coming from when it comes, because they're still experimenting a lot with Lewis Hamilton's car
Yeah, I mean Lewis
during free practice.
Hamilton.
So it is hard to say whether Mercedes has brought that pace into their car, or if they're still searching for it and it just shows up every now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean Lewis Hamilton was the fastest man on track for a few laps. He held the fastest lap for a few laps on those tires, and he loves the place. The man loves the place. So that may have played a part in Mercedes extracting that extra pace. But yeah, I think they are getting there. They have solved some of the issues, as they claim that they have solved the porpoising issue primarily, but the bouncing issue on these sort of street circuits, and we could see how much the every single car was bouncing, right? Not
Yep.
just the Mercedes, not just the Ferrari, but every single car was bouncing quite a bit. So that was definitely down to the nature of the circuit, the street tracks, and I think obviously the FIA have brought in some measures to tackle that. So let's see how that goes. But definitely Mercedes are picking up the pieces and building up on them as they go. And a podium finish for Lewis Hamilton after that miserable weekend in Baku is, I think, the best he could have hoped for.
Yeah, and can't remember the last time Lewis Hamilton beat his teammate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's just a joke, but yeah. On the directive side of things, I was really surprised to see FIA come in and come in with a technical directive so swiftly after the complaints sort of ramped up, and I think Toto Wolff also talked about there is obviously two aspects of it. One is just the technical aspect to the bouncing, to the porpoising, and the second is the fact that how far the teams are pushing the car to create that porpoising for the driver. So that is the second
Yeah.
aspect, and really the balance lies where in such a way that the FIA directive does not stop like innovation or whatever, like the engineering stuff, or hinder whatever progress teams have made technologically, but at the same time um, finds them responsible
Aids
for
the
the
driver.
safety
Yeah.
and health of the driver. So I think that's a good compromise, and hopefully we'll see that come into place starting in Silverstone, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But let's talk about your pain point, Vedant, and that is Fernando Alonso. Uh, you must have been ecstatic after yesterday's qualifying when Fernando Alonso put it P2 alongside Max Verstappen ahead of Carlos Sainz, but just could not put it together in the race. It didn't seem like he had the pace in the drive to even challenge the Mercedes. So the best he could have hoped for was a P5, but even that did not come about. Um, what do you think is the main reason? Obviously, he was nursing an engine issue at the end, but other than that, I think what happened in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I was watching the race and I thought that the general strategy on the F1.com website was take the mediums to 22-25 laps, right? And I was like, sure, Alonso is doing that, which is the ideal strategy and whatever. But I think they took it to 29 laps, and in the end, he was 2.5 or something seconds off the pace, right? So I think for Alpine, the primary goal for them should have been that Alonso, whenever he pits, he comes out ahead of Ocon, because that's how they started basically.
Yeah,
And he came out behind Ocon, so which meant that he couldn't pass Ocon, because at the safety car they became net neutral
yeah,
with both of them pitted for new tires and everything. So they were fighting again, and he was nursing an engine issue. But yeah, I mean, I think this race strategy was not up, like was not the best for him. But I think at the end of the day, P2 in qualifying, the last time that happened for Fernando Alonso was in 2012. So 10 years after, like it's ages ago. It's ages ago. I can't even remember when that happened, but it was great. We knew he had the pace. We knew that Alpine has the pace in these sort of circuits, low drag circuits, and in wet, he found the grip and he found the pace to put it up there.
yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah, unfortunate for Alonso. Not a happy man towards the end of the race to finish behind Esteban Ocon either.
Yeah,
Pretty
he
vocal
wanted
about
to
it on the
fight right
radio.
towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about Haas. I think this was a very typical Haas weekend that we have come to expect from them over the last 4 5 years. You do great
Absolutely.
in quali, you have great race pace, but you end up with absolutely no points. You know, to quote Gunther Steiner, we look like they look like a bunch of wankers out there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was heartbreaking, It was really heartbreaking. I mean, the Haas has qualified five and fifth and
Make
sixth,
is
right?
allergic to points,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you were happy for them at the end of Saturday because they qualified pretty well,
yeah.
and you,
Especially Mick, yeah.
especially Mick, and both of the drivers are, fan favorites, sort of. Everyone wants them to succeed, and they were firmly in the points with not a lot of fast cars behind them. Only Leclerc and Perez were realistically going to overtake them at some point in the race, and every other car was competitive at their level, right? Basically, but yeah, I think you know. Okay, Mick Schumacher had an issue, mechanical issue, and went off, but Kevin Magnussen, what happened there? I don't know. And I mean, we were so busy with the title fight, with the fight for the
He was
win.
battling a
I
little
really
too
didn't know
hard
what
with
happened.
Lewis. Basically, he was
Oh
battling a
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
too,
Right
and then he
at the
damaged
start.
his
Yeah,
wing, and then he got a black
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
orange flag, a black and orange flag. Then you had to get in and change the wing, and that
yeah,
is
yeah.
essentially how he lost out. But yeah, but I think the standout performer of the weekend was Zhou Guanyu. Beat Bottas in qualifying, did just as well in the race. Uh, and it seems of the recent rookies, he's had probably the best few races this season. Out of Mick Schumacher, Yuki Tsunoda, and himself. I would say Zhou Guanyu has been the best performer, even though he's had suffered like a lot of issues, which is why we haven't seen him in the points. But where your expectations were and where he performed. I think Zhou Guanyu has been a real, I don't want to say revelation because he did like very good in F2, but he's definitely like smashed all expectations of the F1 fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming into the season, and I mean last year he was competitive, but in F2 he was competitive, but he was not really challenging Oscar Piastri for the title in 2021 Formula One Championship kind of way. But I think he was always competitive. But coming into F1, he was slightly underrated, I guess, because he was not the F2 winner and he was a paid driver and all those things, right? But this season he has been under the radar somewhat, but absolutely performed relatively well, and I mean pretty well in comparison to Valtteri Bottas, and outqualified him a few times and finishing right behind him. It's his second or third time in the points. So, and he has finished P10, 12 multiple times. So it's been a great season for him.
And
Absolutely.
he's definitely done well. I guess we didn't see Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo, like the new Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
But it seems
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Joe would, on paper at least, has done a better job of it compared to what
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you
Antonio
could
did.
you could argue that with confidence.
Yeah, and obviously, before one person we had to talk about is George Russell. Another top five finish. This man is ready for a title challenge more than anyone else, I feel. When Charles Leclerc came to Ferrari, he wasn't as consistent. He still made those mistakes that we have talked about in the past. We saw one of those mistakes in Imola early this season. Max
Yep.
Verstappen was a hot-headed teenager when he joined Red Bull,
Yeah.
but I think George Russell is in the slot right now. Outperforming Lewis Hamilton at his own team. Making the risky calls. He tried to go out on softs in quali, so he's definitely trying to push. But he's getting the results. And it just seems that the Mercedes in George Russell's hand is happy regardless of where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, finishing in top 5 for every race this season is absolutely incredible. The kind of season we have had so far, I think doing that is a great achievement so far. But I mean, I was really surprised that he went for the softs in qualifying, because I thought on the inters he could have been on the second row ahead of Hamilton, most likely. But yeah, I mean, George Russell is definitely ready for the for fighting at the front if Mercedes give him a car capable of that.
Yeah. Well, that's all from my side, Vedant. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about before we wrap up this podcast?
Well, I think the one thing I really like to talk about is, I don't know, but McLaren's pit stops today were absolutely
All over the place.
out of this world. Because I mean, they had a bad stop with Daniel Ricciardo while Norris was waiting behind him for the
Yeah.
double stack, and then they absolutely botched Norris's stop with mixed tires and tires not being ready and whatever. And then when Daniel Ricciardo came in again under the safety car, they had a slow stop once again. So I mean, Norris was already nursing some issue from qualifying because
Like a
he
degrading engine or something.
yeah he couldn't qualify in the top 10 and couldn't complete qualifying even.
Yeah.
And Daniel Ricciardo was the team leader essentially for this weekend, and we know that Daniel is not the most comfortable guy in that car, so it was a pretty miserable weekend for McLaren.
For a team that finished 4th last year, it just seems like McLaren just never recovered after, having issues early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I say recover, not just in terms of pace, but in terms of, going racing every weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
It hasn't been a smooth operation.
the McLaren we saw
If you see
for
what I did
the
there.
last couple of sorry.
Said it hasn't been a smooth operation. If you see what I did there.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, the McLaren hasn't. The McLaren of the last 2 years was incredible. They were a revolutionized team with great prospects and finishing P3 and P4 in the championship. Absolutely incredible. No one was expecting that, and this season when they had a clean slate to work on it, they couldn't produce the car that they wanted, and they are not on the top of the game in terms of operations as well. So let's see how that goes. I mean, they are definitely a team on the rise and on a recovery, I should say, in terms of the long term goals and whatever, right? But
They were in
but
recovery 2 years ago.
Divya, the thing is, if you want your dream to come true, if you want Lando Norris to be the 2023 world champion, you need that to happen.
Yeah, I think I've given up on that after what's happening this year. But
Yeah.
2021, it did seem like that was possible, absolutely possible. Coming to 2022,
Yeah, that's true,
the
that's
new
true.
Rex. But
That's true.
yeah, well, if that's all, thank you, Vedant, for joining me once again on this podcast and talk F1. As always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll catch you on the next one.